Now, a lot of people are actually filming on their iPhones these days because they don't want to invest in a camera yet when they are starting their new YouTube channel or vlogging content. So I'm going to show you guys a way to make your vlogging or YouTube videos just that much better by just downloading a simple app. And this app is called Filmic Pro. It does cost $15 right now. I believe that is US dollars, and that is a one-time fee. $15 for an app seems like a lot these days when apps are running about $1 to $2. But this is something of an investment that you're gonna make, and it's a one-time thing, so you're gonna get constant updates for this app, but you don't have to pay extra for those updates. So it's very good value, I think, and especially when it makes your quality of the video just that much better. So all you gotta do is just simply go to your Apple Store and just download Filmic Pro. Type in Filmic Pro and then just click download, or buy the app first and then click download. And then after that, you're gonna get to this page right here. Now, I'm gonna actually go over the basics of this layout, and you see right here right now, because I'm talking, on the right hand side you're gonna see the audio levels. The audio levels is something that you can monitor, which most apps cannot do. Some apps can, but most apps can't, and this is really great to know if you're peaking or how your audio levels are. I don't really concentrate too much on this part, but it is good to know. Now I'm gonna get back to the audio in just a second here, but I do want to get over the general outline of this layout for Filmic Pro. So let me explain a little bit about it. So on the bottom right hand corner, you're gonna have the function to take that video. So you're gonna have that round circle, the white circle, and then when you press on it, it's actually gonna go red. So it tells you when you are recording. The other thing is the play button. The play button there is actually to just go back and to see your footage that you recorded. And I'm gonna talk about a little bit about that as well. And also the gear symbol, which is all your settings. In the middle part, you have the time code of how long your footage is actually recording for. It actually tells you what you're recording in. So right now I have it at 4K 24 frames per second. And also it tells you your battery life, how much storage you have on your phone. And also it does have the volume toggle for your microphone. I always leave that up at the top all the way to the right. If you go too little, then it's gonna record little volume on your actual device. So I wouldn't recommend that. And on the left-hand bottom corner, you're gonna have all these settings that are professional level settings. So this is something that I'm going to teach you guys a little bit about so you guys can have better quality video. Again, I'm not going to go over every single detail of this app. If you guys want a video like that, comment down below. But I'm just going to show you guys the basic settings to get really good quality video so you guys can kick off your YouTube and it'll just be banging videos, at least for the quality and how it looks, okay? The content and stuff is totally up to you guys, but as far as how the video looks, hopefully I can help you guys out with that. All right, so first is the audio. Like I said, I wanted to go back to the audio real quick here. When you go to the settings button, you're gonna actually have several different menu options. Now, when you click on audio, this is where you can actually change the settings of the audio in terms of what mic you want to use on your iPhone. Now, the iPhone 12 has 3 mics. Yes, 3 mics. If you didn't know that, you can Google it. It has 3 mics, one on the bottom right next to where you talk, you know, obvious when you're on the phone. One is actually hidden inside the speaker. There's another microphone in there. And then one is in the actual small little tiny hole in the back of the camera, or near the camera, should I say, on the back of the iPhone. So there's 3 speakers. So that's why you can actually go to the top one. You can toggle between back, front, and bottom. Also, you can actually toggle all the way to stereo. And stereo is basically going to use the back and the front microphone at the same time. So you can record a person that's talking at the back and the front to get that kind of audio, so you don't get that muffled mic voice when you are recording at the back of the camera, for example, when you are getting someone to vlog for you or film for you. Now, the next setting underneath that is PCM. These are settings right here for audio files. Now, PCM is mostly for PC users if you are editing on the PC. And then basically the AIFF feature is what was made by Apple. So if you are editing audio on an Apple device, AIF is better. but I found that PCM just works just as good, so I usually don't touch that. I kind of just leave it on PCM and that's about it. Now the next one is Kilohertz Level. Now Kilohertz Level, it really depends on what it is you're trying to do, but I usually leave that at 48 kilohertz because that is the industry standard for film and video. But if you are just doing audio, like you want to do podcasts and you just want to do audio recording, then you would want that at 44.1 kilohertz because that is the industry standard for audio. All right, so let's scroll down a little bit on that menu and you're gonna see Bluetooth microphone, video only, and you're gonna have auto gain correction. Currently, audio gain correction is automatically selected if you choose anything aside from stereo. When you choose stereo, you're not gonna be able to change that setting. So as long as you're on the back microphone, the front microphone, or the bottom microphone, you're gonna be able to change that auto gain setting. But I highly recommend you to not actually use it, only because once you actually use some of these settings inside of the audio, it's going to be baked in. So that means you're not going to be able to edit it in post if you really wanted to and take that away. So I highly recommend you to always edit your raw audio in post without having to do it all on the app. All right, so next up is frame rate. Frame rate is something that is very, very important if you want your video to look very natural. All right, so when you click on frame rate within the settings, you want your actual frame rate to be 24 frames per second if you want the natural motion blur. Okay, now what that just means is when you wave your hand in front of you, right, you can see this motion blur with your own naked eye. You want to try to mimic that in camera because if you don't, then it's going to look very processed looking. So 24 frames per second is pretty much industry standard for movies and everything else, so you want to keep it at that. But you're going to notice within the settings, you see 120 frames per second and also 240 frames per second, but they're all grayed out. The only reason is because I have 10-bit actually on right now, which won't be able to record at 120 and 240 frames per second. Also, it doesn't work in anything more than 1080p, and I'm going to show you that a little bit later. All right, so now we're into the resolutions. The resolution is where I'm kind of going to explain a little bit of the 120 frames per second to make that not grayed out and to be able to select it. So if you want to do slow motion B-roll footage of your product or whatever you're trying to review, or going outside to take some B-roll, this is the settings that you will need to change in order to take that slow motion footage. But anyways, let's go over some of the settings here. So aspect ratio, you want it 16:9, whether it is recording in horizontal or vertical, because vertical format, when you are doing, let's say, Instagram stories or YouTube shorts, 16:9 is going to cover the entire landscape of that phone. So you want it at 16:9. And also with horizontal, because most people are reviewing it on their devices anyways, and also with displays like your monitor, most of them are 16:9, with exceptions of maybe ultra wide screens. So just keep that in mind. But 16:9 is pretty industry standard for right now. But also, if you scroll down a little bit, it says 10-bit. You're gonna need to change this to 8-bit. And then once you select 8-bit at 1080p, you can go back to your frame rate and you're gonna see the 120 frames per second and 240 available to tap onto, so you can record slow motion footage. But otherwise, I really just keep everything on 4K at 24 frames per second at 16:9 ratio. And then also 10-bit. 10-bit is just basically the color. So just to keep it really simple, 8-bit, you get less colors to play with, and 10-bit, you get more colors to play with in post. So when you are trying to adjust skin tones or maybe background lighting or anything like that, you can actually manipulate those colors and it won't look so processed like an 8-bit footage, because 10-bit has more information there for you to play with. Now in the middle here, you're gonna see the Filmic Extreme. Now this is basically just pointing at the quality of that color. I usually keep it at Filmic Extreme because they have the best colors, I think, in my opinion. You can try other ones. There's definitely Apple Standard and Economy, but I usually go to the Extreme just because I want that extreme color. I don't know if that's actually a thing, but anyways, they have it. Also, just another tip here, these 10-bit files are going to be big, okay? So when you are saving them to your camera roll on your actual device, make sure you export them onto a hard drive or onto your computer, because it's going to fill up your phone's memory very, very quick, especially if you have the base model for your phone. Now, if you want a little bit more smaller file sizes, you are going to have to go to 8-bit footage. Now 8-bit footage is not that bad, but again, you're not going to be able to play around with the footage that much. But if you don't care to actually play around with your footage that much, then 8-bit is okay, because then you can actually select the HEVC, and that is the high efficiency mode to keep your file size very, very small. Now the last thing I want to go over just in the settings part is your stabilization. Stabilization is very important if you are doing handheld vlogging or you're trying to take B-roll of something, so you get that really nice smooth buttery footage. But if you have a tripod at home and you're just kind of doing a talking head like this, you're not going to really need that stabilization on. And when you put stabilization on, it's also going to increase the size of that file as well. So I would highly recommend you to turn it off if you have a tripod at home that you're going to do a talking head shot with. Oh, and one more thing, actually just another setting here. If you go to the camera setting, you can actually choose some of the lenses. The zoom lens doesn't really work for the iPhone, but the ultra wide and the telephoto does work. And also the selfie one does work as well. Now you see double take. Double take is actually a separate app on Filmic Pro, which actually records on dual cameras, your front facing camera and your back facing camera. So it's a very, very weird perspective, but it is a really, really cool feature. And I think more people are going to be doing this for their vlogs if they want to show what they want to show in the footage and also themselves reacting to what they saw. So that's pretty cool idea, and just another tip for you guys if you want to do more vlogging footage. All right, so now we're going to get to my favorite part, which is the Pro settings. The Pro settings are just game changing when it comes to taking video on your iPhone, okay? We're just gonna go over this a little bit, but we're not gonna take too much time. The first setting you're gonna go to is the tricolor symbol, okay? This one here on the first one is your Kelvin level. So let's say you are outside, you can select daytime, because daytime is usually warm light, okay? So you can select daytime and then it'll just be whatever the setting is, usually at 5200 Kelvin or maybe 5600 Kelvin, depending, okay? You can select cloudy day or fluorescent light, and you can kind of choose which one you want in terms of your color settings. I usually keep it at 5500 or daylight settings. 5600 is actually true daylight, but it's really, really hard for this app when you are trying to adjust it, just because it's all touch, okay? There's no actual toggle buttons for you to get really, really precise numbers. So when I try on here from 55 Kelvin and then I try to adjust it, let's just try to get 56. Okay, oh, see, it's like it changes just like that. So it's really, really hard to get that exact number. So I usually just go 5500 Kelvin, which is basically the presets that are already in here. And also when I talk about presets on this app, there's an A/B preset, okay? So if you want to, let's say, set up your own preset of a certain color temperature, and I just select whatever here, let's say 8700 in this case. And then what I would do is I would actually go to one of the letters, I would tap and hold. And once you do that, a little message pops up saying that, would you like to save this current setting or apply it? And I usually go save current values. So now it's saved to the B preset, okay? And then when I go to the B preset, it automatically goes to whatever I saved it at. Now you only have two options with A and B for presets, and all the other ones are just kind of included within the package itself. Now you can always do auto white balance if you're doing vlogging and you can't really be bothered, but you are going to have these kind of color shifts happen, so just watch out for that. The next one over is your log setting or your color profile settings, okay? Now you have 4 different settings here. You have natural, which is pretty much straight out of camera type of shot. Then you have linear. Linear is more like nothing has been adjusted. It's completely flat profile, so you can do whatever really you want to do, but it's just kind of like meh, nothing really special about that. HLG, they kind of raise the shadows a little bit, so it has a little bit more contrast. Saturation is also up there kind of as well, so it's not completely flat, but you don't have to edit too much in an HLG profile. So that's pretty good if you don't want to do too much color correction, but you still want to maintain that dynamic range so you don't really lose too much information there. The best setting out of all this is the Log V3. This is brand new actually, and it just came out very, very recently. So now you have a lot of actual information to be able to record a lot of dynamic range within your footage, so you can maintain the shadows and the highlight information so nothing looks too overexposed. You can, if it does get overexposed, you can actually bring them down, or underexposed, you can bring it back up a little bit, but just be careful when you are underexposing any type of footage, you're gonna get a lot of noise. So I would highly recommend you to actually overexpose just a touch and then be able to bring that down so you're not going to get any noisy footage. Now, I don't really play around too much with the shadows and highlights in this setting. You can if you want to, if you want to dial that in, or if you're very into that, but otherwise I don't really touch that. Next is saturation. Saturation is something that you can play around with. Now, the one thing I'll say for saturation is if you add too much saturation, it's always hard in post to take away all that saturation because the data is somewhat baked into that footage of having a lot of saturation from the beginning. So it's always actually better to add saturation later, so then it doesn't have that processed look and you can actually control how much you want to increase. All right, so that's what I recommend for everyone to do. Not everyone does it that way, but that's just my recommendation. It's not the one and only way to do anything. Having that said, whenever I do shoot in vlog, I usually go just to maybe at least plus 50, maybe 40 plus, somewhere around there. I don't really go to 100 or over that. Just because I can always add color in post. Now, remember when I said keep your frames per second at 24 frames per second to be able to get that natural motion blur? You're gonna also have to set your actual shutter speed to be able to match that with the 180-degree rule. So with 24 frames per second, you wanna set the shutter speed at 1/50. Now in this app, it's really hard to get to 1/50, again, because it's all touch and it's hard to get that precise number. So the next setting over from that try symbol is the actual setting for zoom, focus, and exposure, and you're gonna have your shutter speed, okay? Your shutter speed here, right now, it's at 1/48, but you can change that by dragging that kind of dial up and down. Now, you can dial that into, let's say, 1/48, okay? So I can't get to 1/50, but that's the closest I can get. Now, if you want to lock that in, what you're gonna do is just tap on that number and it's gonna turn red. Once it turns red, that means it's locked in. If you move this dial, it's only gonna change the ISO, okay? So that's the digital brightness that you're gonna get within the camera. You wanna keep that low as possible so you don't get noise. Again, I wouldn't go necessarily anything over like maybe 500 ISO within this app. And then on the left-hand side of that dial is the focus and zoom. You can actually go, this is focus right now, so if it's highlighted to white and the other one's blacked out or grayed out, that means you have selected something that you want to adjust. With this focus, you can go manual mode on it. I really don't touch this, to be honest. And then the zoom feature, you can zoom in and out, and also you can zoom in and out while you're recording, so that's a very good feature. But otherwise, I actually don't use too much of those two settings, so I don't really worry about that. Now, when you go out of that menu, you're gonna have two symbols appear on the screen, which is one is a circle and one is a rectangle. The rectangle is your focus, okay? Just remember this, because if you happen to set your shutter speed at 1/50 or 1/48 in this case, because you want that natural motion blur, if you tap on the circle, it's going to release all that information, and whatever you had it at, the shutter speed of 1/48, that's going to be something else now, because now it's trying to automatically expose for whatever you set it at right now. So if you go back into your shutter settings, sometimes that setting might change, so just be careful of that. In this case, shutter speed maintained, but the ISO changed. I had it at 34 ISO, and then now it's at 133. So again, just be careful of that. Once you actually tap on this to lock your shutter, do not press on that circle. You can, however, tap and hold and drag that exposure around so you're able to aim that exposure at different places, just in case you want to move that around for some very odd reason. Now for the rectangle part, you can actually go and tap on that without having to affect the shutter, and you can move that around depending on what you want to focus on, right? So in this case, I want to focus on the background, no problem, I'll focus back there. Do I want to focus on the foreground? I'll focus on the foreground. So you can kind of go back and forth depending on how you want to focus. I usually just keep that free mode because depending on if I want to compose a certain subject or whatever I'm taking, maybe when I'm using the rule of thirds, for example, and I want to put the person or object in the lower right-hand side, I'll just move that square all the way to the right-hand side to be able to focus that subject and make the rest blurry. So that's the reason why I keep that in free form mode, so I can have that freedom. Now the last setting, this is kind of like a bonus setting. It's nothing to do with actually making your videos look a lot better. It's just more of like keeping tabs on these information in case you want to learn about it. So right next to your kind of focus and shutter setting button, you're gonna have this A symbol. When you press on that, you're gonna get these 4 symbols that appear on the top part of your screen. Now, with exception of the last one, The three symbols that you see at first are all to do with exposure, okay? One, you have the zebra. Zebra is pretty much what you have for overexposure, whether it is overexposed, underexposed, so you kind of have that information. And then right next to that, you're gonna have kind of your color information. So red being overexposed and blue being underexposed. And then right next to that is another gear symbol, but this is actually false color. Again, green in this case means perfectly exposed, red is overexposed, and blue is underexposed. And then right next to that one, you're gonna have FP, which is focus peaking. I usually have this on just so I can see where my focus is, if I'm in focus or whatever I'm taking is in focus. So I have that on just to see that part, but otherwise I take it off once I'm in focus and I'm good to go. Also, right here at the end of the video, I just wanted to show you guys a quick comparison between 10-bit footage, 8-bit footage, and also Dolby HDR on Filmic Pro, so you guys can kind of see the difference. I honestly think all three can be very viable for your use of YouTube, so it really depends up to you. The workflow of each one is a little different as well, so you can't really apply the same preset or LUT on the entire footage, so you're gonna have to just adjust it a little bit. But hopefully this actually helps you guys take better video quality out of your iPhone through Filmic Pro app. Again, this is not a sponsored video from Filmic Pro, but I love using this app. If you did like this video, please smash the like button and turn on those notifications for future videos. And if you are not subscribed already, please do so, because I'm going to release some more videos like this so I can give you guys free information and for you guys to learn and create as best as possible. And I want to keep doing that for you guys, alright? Anyways, I'll see you guys on the next one, and take it easy. Peace out.